All right. So the process is simple. Go to ME21N and select your standard vendor 4001, and material is, say, you could have any material as a consignment. Okay, so coffee beans or anything you want, paper. It's not dependent on the material. So what's the quantity? Let's say 500 pounds, right? Contract exists, that's all right. Now, this is a regular purchase order. What is our intent here? We want to create a consignment purchase order. The item category for that is K. You see, it's special stock. Select that, hit enter, and then it says consignment info record for that combination does not exist. So, one of the prerequisites to be able to create a consignment is you should have an info record. All right, let's go create an info record. Do you want to save it? No. So, go to logistics, material management, purchasing, master data, info record, create. So, for vendor 4001, coffee beans 01, purchase org US 01, and plant Chicago 1, right? Don't just say standard, instead select consignment, because for the same combination of materials, purchase org, plant, you can have an info record for standard, or you can have an info record for consignment. In this case, we are creating an info record for consignment. Okay, hit enter, and this is all good. Planned delivery time 5 days, standard quantity 5, and this is the key field, net price, say $10, and here you could put a tax code, say I0, sales tax of 0, enter, 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 enter. So purchase info record, save. Now let's go back and create the purchase order of type consignment. So the document type is not different, but the item category is going to be different, right? So it's coffee beans 01, quantity of 500, and the item category is consignment. Enter. Contract exists, that's all right. So this time it doesn't say that the record does not exist because we have already created it. Another key feature, do you see a conditions tab here? The moment I put the item category as K, the conditions tab is gone. That means for a consignment, there's no pricing. You should be able to guess why. The reason is consignment is not really a sale. So when we are asking for 500 pounds of coffee, we are not really saying, I'm ready to pay for 500 pounds just yet. All this order or purchase order is requesting is send me 500 pounds of coffee on consignment. And because it's a consignment, it's not going to have a price and we're not going to own it. So we're not going to pay for it yet. Does it make sense? All right. So we're all good here. Let's see if we can save this. All right. Standard order 37 is created. Save that. Now, the vendor is going to send the goods, of course, right? So we're going to do a goods receipt. And before we do that, let's go check the stock. MMBE and coffee beans oven, Chicago, and click execute. All right. So in the Chicago storage location, there is 267 quantity, out of which some of it is in raw materials and some of it is in coffee storage location. So let's go over to MyGo and see what happens when you try to receive the goods of that 500 against a consignment. So purchase order, I've copied the purchase order number already, paste it. All right, so that's a quantity of 500. And as you can see, at the line item level, the goods movement is the typical 101, just like any other purchase order. But there is an indicator here. This is called as special stock. So it's the same movement type, but into a consignment, not into unrestricted stock, right? So storage location, let's say, is coffee, all right? Then we're going to say item okay, check, document okay, and save it. Okay, material document is posted 2580. And if you want to see the material document, go to MB03 and let's look at the accounting. So this is our material document, and you see the movement type is 101 and it's of type K, consignment. Check the accounting document. Material does not include an accounting document. Can you guess why? The reason is simple. It is not a sale, so it should not affect our inventory valuation. We can see the inventory go up in quantity, but not the value. And when there's no difference in value, why do you need an accounting document? No need. So click OK. That's a key thing you got to keep at the back of your mind. When you do a consignment, when you take in a consignment, the valuation of your material is not going up. It's just that the quantity is going up. Now, that is another story. How is the quantity going up? Let's come back here. So we have a quantity of 267, out of which coffee location has 237, right? Now we have done a goods receipt for the consignment. Let's refresh this and see what are the changes. Do you see this line here? Vendor consignment 500. It's not unrestricted stock, or rather it's not just unrestricted stock. You can just take out of it anytime you want. In that sense, it's unrestricted. But it's not really our stock. It's the vendor's stock sitting at our location. That's the key. If there is any confusion in trying to understand what is consignment, just think of it this way. It's vendor stock sitting at our location. We don't own it, but we have physical access to it. The moment you touch it, meaning the moment you withdraw something from that lot, it becomes yours. So it's there at your disposal to consume anytime you want. And that's why it's treated separately. Although it's unrestricted, meaning it doesn't have to go through quality at this point, it's still marked as special stock. Now, there are different kinds of special stock: consignment, subcontracting, pipeline, so on and so forth. In this case, it's consignment special stock. Now, double click it, and here is the breakup by vendor, meaning this is stock that has come in from vendor 4001. Now, if another 500 came in from another vendor, say 4002, the total is going to be showing up as 1000 in the previous screen. And the moment you double click it, it's going to show the breakup as 500 from 4001 and 500 from 4002. The point being, SAP is keeping track of all the vendor consignments broken down by vendor. All right, so let's close that. Now we have 500 in stock sitting in a consignment. Now let's go consume them. How do you consume them? You can consume them for a sales order, meaning somebody needs coffee, they create a sales order, and goods from this consignment can be consumed. Now the production department needs it. For example, some coffee beans are required to make some cakes. There is a production order to make a cake. You can consume from this lot. A project system can consume goods from this lot, meaning a birthday party is a project. And it can consume coffee from this lot. So any consumption business process can consume goods from this lot. Now typically when we want to consume, the easiest way is to do a MyGo and goods issue, right? And we do it against a cost center so that we don't have to have a source document like a project system or a production order or a sales order. They're all cumbersome. But this is really easy. So what do? You do a goods issue against other. If you want, you can use a purchase order, and we're gonna use a plant Chicago 1 and a storage location coffee, material coffee beans 01. How much? Let's say quantity of 100, right? So we have a consignment of 500, out of which we are consuming 100, right? Now, this is all good. If you click OK, it doesn't consume from the consignment lot because we have not specifically asked to be consumed from the consignment lot. The way to do that is by selecting a special stock indicator of K. You see, the moment I hit enter, there is going to be additional tabs coming up here. Just watch out for it. Hit enter. And what's the additional tab? Partner. And why is that? The reason is you're asking SAP to pull 100 quantity of consignment goods. And because we said consignment, SAP is saying, okay, which partner's consignment? Okay, we can answer that. Vendor 4001. That's the only partner we have at this point. If you have more, you can definitely put the vendor there. And it's going to pull up from that lot. Do a quick check. Make sure everything is okay. All right, it requires a cost center. And you know how to put it, right? Admin 01. All right, another quick check. Tax jurisdiction. There's a tax jurisdiction issue, but we could check that during invoice processing. All right, save it. Okay, material document is posted and 8070. Now, MB03, let's check out how the material document is. So it's a 201 with a special indicator K. And what does the accounting document say? Now, the difference between the previous process, which was receiving the consignment, and the current process, which is trying to take some goods or consume goods from that consignment, is that in the previous case, there's no accounting. But in this case, there is accounting. Why? Remember, I said only when you touch that lot and extract goods from that lot will it become yours. And that's when a value change is happening. That's when the accounts payable is hit. That's when we are liable to pay. And of course, the raw material value increases. Okay. Now, how do you settle that invoice? Or how do you settle the fact that you have removed 100 pounds or 100 kilos from that consignment against vendor 4001? Before we go there, let's check out our stock. Well, we used to have 500 pounds of coffee as consignment for a particular vendor 4001. How much do you have now? 400. Why? Because we have removed 100 pounds or we have consumed 100 pounds against a cost center using MyGo, right? Now that should make sense from a goods movement perspective. Now, how do you settle the invoice? Now, invoice settlement for consignments is slightly different from invoice settlement for the regular standard purchase orders. So you don't do a MyGo. Instead, you do MRKO. You see, the goods are in your lot. Here's the deal. So the vendor has sent in 500 pounds of coffee and it's sitting there somewhere in our warehouse, right? Out of which we have consumed 100 pounds. The vendor is out there somewhere. He doesn't know that we have consumed 100 pounds out of it. So it's our responsibility to bill ourselves against the vendor. So the vendor is not going to send us an invoice. We're going to generate an invoice ourselves. The way to do that is using this process called MRKO. Now, this is an intelligent process that will tell you what are your outstandings based on vendor or based on material. So select your material, coffee beans 01, and for 4001 vendor, the plant. And there are two options here, display or settle. Let's look at display. Do you see the record? The record is for a quantity of 100 that's withdrawn, and 100 multiplied by 10 is 1000. And it says it's not settled yet. Well, to settle it, you'll have to select settle and click execute. Now, this is where the tax error is coming. Now, you can go ahead and fix it, but the point is, the moment that is fixed, it just creates an invoice. You don't have to really do anything. You don't have to go to Miro, receive the invoice, because you don't even get an invoice. Why? Because the vendor doesn't know that we have consumed 100 pounds. The company knows that it has consumed 100 pounds, so it's got to be able to bill itself and settle all the goods that it has consumed. Right? And so even if you create that invoice in MRKO, it's not going to go and update the PO. Right? So here's the difference. So there's a PO, right, where let's say 5000001, against which the vendor has delivered 500 pounds of coffee. Now, we have removed or consumed 100 pounds of coffee. This, if you did it using the standard process where you have a PO and then there's a goods receipt, you create a goods receipt in MyGo, and that updates it in the PO history. And then you get an invoice, you go to Miro, create an invoice, and then it's updated in the PO history. That is the standard business process for purchasing. In consignment, the vendor is putting things in the lot, you're consuming goods from the lot. You could as well do a return, but the point being, the goods that you're withdrawing is linked to the vendor. The linkage is only at the vendor level. It's not at the purchase order level. So when you do a settlement in MRKO, you're settling for 100 pounds of goods against the vendor, say 4001. You're not settling it against the PO. The PO, in the case of consignment, is merely an instruction to put goods in the lot. And when you return goods from the lot, you could do a return PO, and the vendor could take them away. And that's again a consignment. It's called a consignment return. But when you settle, meaning when you go to pay, it's not tagged with the purchase order. Instead, it's tagged with the vendor. That's why this invoice that's being settled is not linked to the PO.